Well, while Americans were enjoying a 3-day holiday weekend, courtesy of Martin Luther King, the rest of the world was reacting to some of the news that came out over the weekend. And our markets finally got a chance to react today. It was a big day in the U.S. markets. Pretty much everything related to the United States was down. It was really a sell America day. And I think this really is going to set the tone for the rest of the year. The Dow Jones dropped over 800 points today. Let me see the exact decline. 870 points, about 1.75%. And both the NASDAQ and the S&P 500 were down a little over 2%. But it wasn't just U.S. stocks that were down. Bonds really got clobbered. In fact, the yield on a 10-year Treasury is now up to 4.3%. It had gotten down to about 4% around the time of the last quarter point Fed rate cut. But we are now headed higher. I think we're going to be back at 4.5% in short order. And in fact, the 30-year yield is now back above 4.9. I think we could be above 5% by next week. The dollar index also tanking today across the board, down almost a full percent, down 0.8 to 98.58. So dollar down, U.S. Treasuries, U.S. bonds down, U.S. stocks down. Gold and silver, on the other hand, were way up. Gold was up about $160 since Friday. We closed almost at 47.60. 47.58 is the last I'm looking at it. We closed on Friday at just about 4,600 even. Maybe it was slightly below. I think it was just below 4,600, maybe 45.95, something like that. So $160, a 3.5% move up in gold. Silver did even better, was up 4.5%. We closed above 94, about 94.40 and change. And we traded, I think, above 95.5 intraday. So that's the new record high. I mean, we were actually closer to 100 than we were to 90 in silver. So big move up in gold and silver. And in fact, foreign stock markets, in terms of U.S. dollars, did pretty good. I mean, some of the European names were down, but a lot of the emerging market stocks in Southeast Asia and South America were very strong, had positive days. So it was a good day if you were invested in overseas stocks, if you own precious metals, if you own mining stocks, emerging markets. It was a horrible day if you owned U.S. stocks. And of course, if you owned Bitcoin, which also tanked even more than the stock market. Bitcoin is now back below 90,000, not 90, although it will be back below 90 eventually, but right now it's below 90,000, trading around 89,600 and change. It was about 95,000 last week. In fact, Michael Saylor announced on his X page this morning that Strategy spent another couple of billion, more than $2 billion, buying more Bitcoin. He's already down over 100 million on it because his average price was over 95,000. Somehow he managed to buy the high. Now, I don't think that's a coincidence that he bought the high. I think his buying is what made the high. He came into the market and bought a bunch of Bitcoin to prop up the price. I mean, that's mainly why he's buying. He's not trying to get a good price. He's trying to manipulate the price. But he only manipulated it enough to fill him on his order. And then once he stopped buying, the market tanked. So Bitcoin also, again, if you own cryptocurrencies, if you own Bitcoin, it was a tough day, but it's going to be an even tougher week. It's going to be a tough month, and it's going to be a very painful year if you don't get out of these markets. And even though gold and silver have already moved up a lot, they're not going to stop rising, as I've been saying. In fact, if you go look at my podcast from last week and again, the Schiff Gold Friday market wrap that I did on Friday, what did I say? Once again, buy on Friday, buy on Saturday. Don't wait till Sunday night to buy gold. Don't wait till Tuesday when the U.S. markets reopen, because look what you're looking at. Look at how much more expensive gold and silver is now than it was on Friday. Now, the gold and silver mining stocks had good days. Could have been better, but good days. The GDX was up 5.7%, and the GDXJ was up 6.2%. Now, I mentioned on Friday, on the Schiff Gold Friday market wrap, that I thought that the action in the mining stocks was very constructive to a rally this week, because even though gold and silver finished down on the day, gold was down about 20, 30 bucks, silver was down a couple of bucks, the gold stocks all rallied and the silver stocks rallied. So that, to me, it looked like investors were starting to realize that it doesn't matter if gold and silver go down. These stocks are so cheap, even if they go way down, which they're not going to do. And some of the stocks had really good days today. Just as an example, my best performing gold stock was I Am Gold. That one was up 15.5% today. Of course, it's at a 52-week high. We actually own that. It's one of our top 5 holdings. Not just do we own it in the gold fund, it's one of my top 5 holdings in the Euro-Pacific International Value Fund, which, by the way, will be probably the number 1 fund in its category year to date out of over 300 funds, in part because we do have some gold stocks as part of the portfolio, one of them being I Am Gold. So that one was up 15.5%. My best performing stock on the day that I own myself is a small silver company, which actually we own in the gold fund too. But Silver Crown Royalties was up 40% in one day, right? So this gives you an idea of what can happen. And by the way, 52-week low on this stock, 381. Where is it now? 1275 is where it closed. Today's high is 1360. So this gives you an idea of the size of the moves that have been made. But despite the fact that gold and silver stocks have moved up so much, I believe they're cheaper now than they were a year ago before the big move. That's because of the huge increase in the price of gold and silver. Now, I expected this big increase, although to be honest, I didn't expect it to happen this rapidly. But it's even surprised me a bit, the speed that the market is rallying. Not that we're at these prices. I actually expected us to be at these prices a long time ago. We're finally catching up to where I knew we were going to be. But clearly, we're moving a lot faster. This is going to continue. So it's a whole new ball game for these mining stocks. So they are still ridiculously cheap. I think there is tremendous upside potential in these stocks from here. And I think at the end of the year, people who did not buy gold and silver stocks here are going to be kicking themselves. And if you own them and you sold some because you thought, oh, look, I doubled or tripled my money, let me get out, people are going to regret those sales. Normally, you don't regret taking a profit. But in this case, I think people will, because they'll be leaving so much more on the table. So my advice, again, is get into these gold and silver mining stocks. You don't even have to wait for a pullback. I mean, there are a lot of pullbacks, so if you want to be cute. But you know what? Doesn't even matter. And if you're buying my fund, you can only buy at the close. So, it makes it simple, right? You only get filled. My gold fund is Euro Pacific Gold Fund, EPGIX. We got a lot of small stocks like this Silver Crown, right? We got a lot of these little ones that have the potential to go up 40% in one day, right? You don't have that much potential in the big stocks, although when you get I Am Gold going up 15%, that is a big move in one day. But a lot of my stocks were up 5, 6, 7% today. So that was only maybe double normal. But there are a lot more days coming like this. And I know a lot of people, I've been posting on X a lot, telling people, hey, go buy gold, buy silver. And people keep saying, why are you telling people to buy the top? And that's because it won't be the top for long. Remember, I forget, I said it first earlier last year, but I said the longer you wait to buy the high, the higher the high you're going to buy. And that's it. Yes, I'm telling people to buy the top because today's top won't be the top for long. There's not going to be big pullbacks. Yeah, there'll be some, but they're not going to be big enough to wait for. And you never know exactly when they're going to happen because there's so much money waiting to come in to gold and silver. That's what the precious metals mining stock investors still haven't come to terms with. How much higher gold and silver prices are going. They're still worried that we're going to have a big drop. That's why they're reluctant to bid up these prices because they don't believe they're sustainable. The only thing that's not sustainable is how low they are. They are going to keep going up. And the reason that this is going to happen, again, by the way, the symbol on my gold fund is EPGIX, or go to Europac.com and look at, we have separately managed accounts as well in gold stocks. But the reason that this is going to happen was highlighted this weekend with Donald Trump's rhetoric, right? That it is basically giving the world a strong reason to do what they should have done decades ago and what I have been expecting them to do. Little did I know that the catalyst would be Greenland. I mean, who the hell knew that, right? That would be the straw that breaks the camel's back. Would be what causes ultimately the mass exodus out of the U.S. dollar, and what causes the U.S. dollar to lose its reserve currency status would be Greenland. And I said something about that on my last podcast. I could not believe what the president was saying. And of course, he's getting all this support, from Republicans who are afraid to stand up because what he's saying is idiotic. Yet all of his cabinet members, all of the Republican pundits on television, the rest of the Senate Republicans, they're all standing behind the absurdity of what the president is saying about Greenland. And what caused the big sell-off on Sunday night and then Monday here and Tuesday was Donald Trump basically reiterating that, look, we're going into Greenland whether the Greenlanders want it or not. We can either do it my way or the highway, the easy way or the hard way. We're bringing the troops in and taking it over. We need Greenland. We got to have Greenland, right? We need it for national security. We need it for whatever, the resources, the oil and gas, the strategic minerals. We need it and we're going to take it. And I pointed this out that Trump said, look, we got the hottest economy in the world and we have the strongest military in the world. Now, he's wrong about the hottest economy, but he is correct that we have the strongest military. And what he said is that we're going to use that might to do whatever we think is right. That, nothing can stop us but my own mind, right? I have unlimited power. I've got carte blanche to use America's military to do whatever I want. And I said this is a very dangerous message to send because I said that one of the reasons the world was willing to give America the exorbitant privilege of the reserve currency, one of the reasons the world was willing to support our economy and allow us to have this big military was because we would use that military to defend the world from aggression, not institute aggression, that the U.S. military would be a force for good. Now Trump is saying it's a force for America's good. And the rest of you, well, you're just going to do what we want. If you have something that we need, we're going to take it because what are you going to do about it, right? Nobody can stop us. And in fact, he wrote a letter to the prime minister of Norway, and he basically said that one of the reasons that he's no longer a man of peace is because he didn't get the Nobel Peace Prize, right? He was all pissed off that he didn't get the Nobel Peace Prize, which, first of all, isn't issued by the Norwegian government. It's, it was endowed by, it's a private, award. It's not given by the government, but Trump believes the government has a lot of power. But apparently he's thinking about going into Greenland out of spite, right? Reminded me of the Seinfeld episode. But, I can't even believe nobody proofreads the stuff that the president writes. I mean, obviously, nobody proofreads the nonsense he puts out on Truth Social. I mean, so he basically writes this letter, and admits that he's got a grudge against Europe because he didn't win the Nobel Peace Prize. And so now, screw peace, right? I'm for war, right? Although he's had to kind of walk that back, but he really couldn't because he wrote it, right? It's hard to walk it back when you own it. And of course, Denmark, that's a totally separate country from Norway. I mean, I'm getting back at Norway by invading Denmark or taking Denmark, Greenland. What has Greenland got to do with Norway, right? But the whole absurdity of this, the idea that we even need Greenland, is almost as ridiculous as invading it to get what we want. But the fact that he is putting that out there is extremely dangerous, and it is going to blow back in a big, big way. And I think that it's going to be impossible to put these worms back in the can, right? He's let them out, and even if he tries to backtrack, even if he tries damage control, it's too late, right? It's out of the box, and the world has made a decision, and they're going to implement that decision. I'm going to talk about this. We got a quick commercial break, so stick around. It's about to get real.